Hello and welcome to the Community, Jobs, and Progress podcast. It is my honor to have you here with us today. I am Brad Tabke, the host of the podcast, and we have another great guest for you here today. Today we're chatting for episode 20 with Roshini Rajkumar. She is a communication specialist. She is an incredible person and does a lot of awesome things. And today we're going to talk with you as an elected official about how communication and messaging and brand management will help you as an elected official and what you can do to help your community as an elected official through managing brand and messaging. So you can find all the show notes for this podcast at communityjobsandprogress.com/episode 20. Enjoy. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. I'm really excited to have another great guest for us today. This is someone who I've gotten to know for a while now through my time as mayor and other things. And so it's great to have Roshini Rajkumar with us today. And Roshini is a presence engineer and personal brand strategist. She hosts News and Views with Roshini Rajkumar on WCCO radio here in Minneapolis. And when she's not on the air, Roshini is an executive coach, national keynote speaker, and event MC. She draws on more than 30 years of public speaking, a decade-long career as a television reporter, and her status as a licensed attorney to get her clients ready for high-stakes communication endeavors and powerfully engineer their personal brands. And so Roshini is an expert on all the things that we're going to talk about today. So I'm really excited to have you here with us today. Thanks for being here, Roshini.
Oh, thank you.
So one thing that I get asked about quite often from elected officials and from other folks in economic development is how to handle messages. And with cities and with communities, you generally have a lot of different people going and saying a lot of different things at different times. But how can one person best manage their message? Do you have any good tips or tricks for one person as an elected official to help communicate and to spread their message and their personal brand?
Well, consistency is really important. So good messaging always starts with an authentic personal brand. So this is definitely a time that phoniness or anything that's a copycat kind of thing will not work for you. So the best way to think about messaging down the line is to first really assess who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, and what your vision is that you really want to get out there to the public. And from that, with some keywords that you may come up with individually, you can start to formulate that message that makes sense for both your brand, but also the vision that you are trying to accomplish.
Perfect. So if we back up one step from that, what exactly is a personal brand, and why is it important, especially to elected officials?
Well, it's so much yourself, right? Because your personal brand has the visual elements, the sound elements, so it's everything about you physically, about you verbally, even your body language plays into this, what you wear, what you say. But it's also even deeper than that. It's what is at your core. What do you stand for? So sometimes, we can think of some of the iconic brands out there. Let's think about the consumer world, Coca-Cola as a brand, Bentley as a brand. Some of these are worldwide brands that have name recognition, but some keywords that really probably come to most people's minds when you say those brands. So ideally, even for you as an individual, we want to make sure that when your name is said or your organization's name is said, a couple very strong and powerful, yet concise, keywords come to mind for people. One of my lines is "Own Your Wow," and I hope that people really associate that with me. And in fact, people do come up to me, whether they're my clients or someone who's read my book or just others who have heard me speak, who will say, "Roshini, I really had a wow moment, and let me tell you about it." And I love hearing that because they're mirroring my language right back at me as they explain how it played out for them. So really that authenticity is what I'm getting at here when people are starting to assess themselves and their own personal brands.
Let's talk about that wow moment and own your wow a little bit here, because I watched you have a lot of videos and a lot of information about those topics that you've got on your website, which we will link to on the show notes for this episode, so everybody can go and find those and watch those videos, because you are a fantastic speaker and you have an extraordinary presence when you are speaking. It shows really great in those videos. But I think that it really helped me as an elected official, especially, to think about it in that context, and understanding that how people hear your message and how people listen to you, and how you can really accentuate your positives and those wow moments. So let's talk about that a little bit as what is Own Your Wow and how does it affect folks?
Right, and I mean, you're a good example of someone who doesn't leave the fact that you're a family person at home, literally. I mean, that shows up on some of your social media. It shows up in how you think about the world, your worldview. So it's important, to the extent that a public official wants to share any of their personal side, and I think some people overexpose themselves, but to the extent that you can relate to constituents or relate to people out there, whatever about your personal side you want to share could fit into that personal brand. So, for example, if you're a dad and that's something that you really want people to know, or maybe one of your children goes to events with you, or whatever that is, that might, it's authentic. Hopefully that's not done in a fakey kind of way. But if it's authentic, then it's yet another way people can get to know who you are and know what you stand for. It's also another place where you can really connect with your audience and be approachable. And most public figures really want that. They want to be approachable. And examples. I mean, you hear about the different kinds of politicians. Oh, yeah, I could have a drink with him or a cocktail with her. Well, that's one part of the relatability piece when it comes to your personal brand. But it really is more important in anyone's brand that you're credible and what you say is true and your word counts. That's the most important thing when people are judging you from the outside. And that really needs to go into your messaging.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct on that. And I had always put together for any periods of time. It changed over time, but I put together three main things that pretty much anytime I had a public message or something that was public facing that I wanted to get across, it had to fit within one of those three buckets, whether it was an economic development project or whether it was telling the story of the community or those kinds of things. And that worked really well. Do you think that that's a good thing for elected officials to put together, is just a few topics that they try and stick to as much as possible so people hear their message, or does it need to be broader than that?
Well, I think that core messaging is really a great idea. It helps you organize your thoughts, especially if those are passion points for you, which, in your case, it sounds like they are, and maybe people get to know you and your brand better by hearing you speak regularly about those three buckets or zones of content. It doesn't mean you won't answer questions about other things. I mean, when you're the mayor or a legislator or a city council person, you do have to cover a broad array of items. But if you're really known for a few things that you're doing well and that you're really following, that is another way to have people reach out to you about those things and not necessarily generic things or blind kind of catch-all sort of letters or phone calls that you would receive. So it is absolutely a great idea. With some of my executive coaching clients and others that I work with, other leaders and sometimes politicians, I talk about the concept of the individual communication plan. And your bucket analogy could sort of fit with this. So in the individual communication plan, I advise that every 3 months you look at what are three big delivery goals you have. So whether that is to stop saying too many ahs and ums, is something that's kind of trivial, but a lot of people do. That could be one vocal behavior goal that you're going to work on intensively for 3 months with the hope of eradicating it. Another could be to just have more handshaking, like door-to-door kind of grassroots efforts. That could be one of your goals. And another could be something about doing better PowerPoints whenever you present, let's say. Let's say those are your three big goals for this next quarter. Well, each month and each week you check in with those goals. You could interplay your buckets that you were talking about, Brad, onto that individual communication plan and kind of marry the two concepts. And so you're always working on content and delivery at the same time in three distinct zones. And your 3 content zones may stay the same for the year, but every 3 months you're forced to look at, how have I grown this? And if it's a zone that's not working for you, or you find your constituents are not so into it, maybe you need to find another one that you're pursuing and spending your time with.
It is funny, just on a personal note, that the first topic that you gave there of those 3, I am looking at my MacBook that has a Post-it note on it that has the word and a circle with a line through it, because
That's great.
I have a big issue with saying a lot, and whenever I listen to the podcast, it drives me absolutely crazy. So I am actively working on that. So it's funny that comes up right now. But see, there it goes again. I want to talk a little bit about the current state of politics. On your radio show, you talk a lot about politics and a lot of different great, very impactful topics on there. But politics and messaging is something that is kind of, in my opinion at least, out of whack right now, that some people feel like they can say pretty much anything that comes to their mind, and it's not necessarily always good for themselves personally as an elected official, but also it doesn't represent the views of their community when people just spout off and say whatever they want to say. And there seems to be a little bit less, a little more, I don't know if candor is the right way to put it, but it feels dirtier than it used to be. And so what do you think about that? Is that something that you feel is happening out there? Is that something that people can or should work on, or is that just part of being authentic?
Well, this is a really great question. This topic came up recently when I was at the radio station, and we were talking about people who call and text in, and sometimes they get very, very colorful. And I mean that in a bad way. They're very angry.
Right.
They text angry messages. Almost anything can set them off. And one of the producers and I were talking about how it just seems like people won't hit the pause button before they react. And so a lot of people, and definitely politicians, can win by this rule. You may have just that immediate reaction that comes to mind. And even if the pause is just a couple seconds, to be able to just take a break, really quickly rehear what you just thought you heard, and then react to that. So sometimes that is the way to go to avoid some of this. I really am old school in believing that there's no room for rudeness and no room for anything but civil behavior when it comes to politics and public service. And the politicians who remember that and embody that and live that as part of their personal brand, in my belief, will continue to get elected and hopefully will set the standard for the rest of the various political bodies that are really under fire right now, and for many of them, deservedly so.
Yeah, it is crazy, and it's been happening for a few years, I suppose, where someone says, especially someone tweets something really quickly and says something that they absolutely should not have said, and if they had taken that pause, they would have realized that, wow, this is a really dumb thing to say, and to not hit the send button on those kinds of things. But let's take some of the more benign kind of things. If an elected official, let's say from a smaller community, we'll go like Shakopee or a suburb, those types of things. What if someone says something that they absolutely shouldn't have said, but it's not necessarily hurtful or rude, it's just simply completely off message as to who they are as a community? Actually, a good example would be in our region, and this is absolutely 100% rude and terrible, but the message of Delano, Minnesota got very messed up when a family moved to Delano recently in the last few months, and then last weekend, I believe it was, someone came and wrote all sorts of negative racial slurs and swastikas and broke into their house and messed things up. How does a community really work to say that this is not who we are, this is not what we believe in, something bad happened here, but this is not who we are, and this is not what we want people to know our community for, because we have a lot of great people here, and this is not us. And how does someone message that and work with that and recover from that?
Well, yes, and I remember seeing some of the news reports on that story, which was just terrible. This is a time that hopefully politicians, because they are the leaders in their communities, they're that frontline response to something like this, get together, whether it's the city council and the mayor or some of the other bodies, or even police, and they get together and behind, in this case, I would say first behind closed doors, and be in alignment about what they believe as a community is right and wrong, and then select a spokesperson. Because when there's something like that, which is such an egregious violation to the whole community, when it happens even to one family, you don't want mixed messaging. So it's a good time for the leaders of any community to decide, are there 1, 2, 3 spokespeople? Often 1 or 2 is the best idea. And what do we want to say at a time like this? And keep the message also very clear that dialogue will be open and that you're accessible as a leader to anyone who wants to talk with you or email you or just get some answers, or maybe even set up a hub of information saying, on our city website, any updates will be listed on page X. Go there if you have questions, and then there should be something there. Maybe there is a letter from the mayor that's explaining how they believe things went down, and here's what the city and the police are doing together to work to heal the community. I mean, being open and being transparent is very important, but in order to do that well, you also have to be very clear and in alignment as a leadership team how you are going to be clear and what you will actually say.
Right. Yeah, I believe that from what I've seen, that's a lot of what the city, at least on the public-facing side, the city of Delano did, and the mayor got out and spoke about it and said that this is not who we are, and the governor ended up getting involved, and I don't know how that all happened, but he was very clear, and the city was very clear that this is not our community. Something bad happened here, but this is not who we are. And I thought they did a great job to tell that story and to get some other things done. So I was really proud of how they handled and worked through the whole thing. So on a similar topic, one of the first times that you and I had chatted was on a radio show not long after I was first elected mayor, and Tony had me on the radio because it had snowed, and it was me being super gung-ho as a new mayor, and I tended to make some of the public works guys in town super angry with me because I was talking about snow removal and that we should have plowed and we hadn't plowed and all that kind of stuff. And you gave me some very, very good advice on the radio about how, if you say something as an elected official, what you can do about that you're either embarrassed or concerned or you didn't state something correctly, and to be very truthful about it. So what kinds of advice do you have for elected officials when they may have said something incorrectly, or how do they recover from saying something dumb that they may or may not have said, or how do they recover and handle something that they had said that could have been perfectly truthful and honest, but it just ticked some people off?
Yeah, and here's the thing. No one is perfect, and so nobody is. And if we can keep a sense of humor and also have a little bit of humility about it, it is okay for a public official to say, hey guys, or hey gals, or hey team, I messed up. I spoke too soon, and here's what I do know now. Sorry if it was confusing. And you're good on social media. I mean, sometimes that venue is your social media outlet when, you can't necessarily pull a press conference together or issue a formal statement, or until you can do that, your social media outlets are a quick way, when done well, tastefully, grammatically, when done well, those social media outlets can be a really great way to get information out that you want to be quick and hopefully seen widely.
So is that message of humility and having a bit of a sense of humor about yourself, is that one of the best tactics to take when you screw up on something? Is that one of the best things to do, or is there anything else that elected officials should do when they mess some things up?
Yeah, I mean, it's the gravity of the subject probably matters a lot. So if it's something that humor is just going to dig you deeper into a hole, then probably not. Then keeping humility in mind and just explaining why you said what you said, not being over-apologetic, but apologizing if that is necessary and moving on, right? And people like solutions. I mean, most people like solutions versus let's just keep on talking about what went wrong.
Right.
So if your brand is about solutions and vision, then even when you mess up, if you can come back and say, well, here's what I understood, I'm sorry I misunderstood, or whatever the case may be, but here's the plan moving forward. This is what I would like us to focus on moving forward. Can I get some consensus on that? Or what do you think about that, depending on the audience with whom you're speaking or how you're addressing. Obviously, if you're doing it on social, you're not going to always, be looking for that response rate back. But that's one way. If it is a topic where you can use humor, then I would say use humor. Humor is such a great icebreaker, and it helps people also see that you're not taking yourself too seriously. Ultimately, we need to take our work seriously, but not ourselves. So you should judge what is the topic that you might have messed up,
right,
and what's the best and most authentic way to react. Now, if you're not a funny person, humor is not the best route in any situation, right? So you just have to be the straightforward, here are the words, here's what happened, and give it to them straight. And don't even try to blend humor, because that's not going to work for you. But really, people just want honesty. What I see at the national level, and sometimes even at the Minnesota local level, is when people think they can outsmart the constituents, or they can speak in double talk. And that is really off-putting to most Americans. It's very off-putting to constituents. So if you get to be known as someone who's a straight talker, that goes a long way.
And I see a lot of happening with local elected officials trying to take on some of the tactics and strategies that are happening on a national level right now, that when you know someone personally and it's your neighbor and those kinds of things, if you're trying to talk to, say, different things to each different constituency that you're speaking with, it just doesn't work on a local level. It's a really damaging, difficult, impossible thing to pull off as it goes in the national level, because they can say whatever they want to whoever they want, and they don't have to always tell the full story as long as it fits with whatever message they're trying to peddle at that point. And so it's really important for local elected officials to understand that authentic self and being a human being.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is just so true. And that's where a lot of elected officials go wrong, is when they feel like, oh, I've got to be something different than I would have been 2 years ago when I was a regular citizen. Right. No, you just have a new title, but more responsibility, most likely.
Exactly.
Straight talk, always going to be on your side. So I'm a big fan of $5 and $10 words and nothing that's kind of overly crazy.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, Roshini, thank you so much for being here. You, as always, are an extraordinary wealth of knowledge, and we are bumping up against our end time here today for the podcast. But I just wanted to ask if you had any other thoughts or topics that you wanted to cover that could help with the branding and personal management for personal messaging for elected officials. Is there anything that we missed that you'd like to chat about?
Well, one thing I would say is, one of my lines, less is more. So the best thing you can do is not try to take too much on as you're growing your own messaging platform and really fine-tuning your personal brand. Try to do one thing at a time. Don't feel like you have to take 10 things on at once, because results are very difficult when you're trying to overdo it like that. So take on 1 or 2 things each month, work on them, review for results, get some honest feedback from people you trust, and then celebrate when you have some wins. Celebrate the good posts or celebrate the good town hall meetings, whatever the case may be.
I love the celebrating part especially. That is extraordinary advice. So, again, thank you so much for being with us here at Roshini. You have shared a lot of knowledge and wisdom with elected officials across the country, and we really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
All right, have a wonderful day. Thanks, Roshini.
You too.
See what I mean? Roshini is an extraordinary wealth of knowledge and wisdom about communication and how that can pertain to taking care of your community as an elected official. So I was really happy with how this podcast turned out, and I'm hoping that you, as an elected official or someone who loves economic development, has learned a ton from it today. So again, you can find the show notes for this podcast at communityjobsinprogress.com/episode 20. And if you could, while you are there, click on the iTunes link and leave us a review. Reviews help people find the podcast a lot more in iTunes. And you can just go to communityjobsinprogress.com/iTunes and help us by leaving a review there on iTunes and letting your fellow elected officials and lovers of economic development know that it's a great podcast for you to listen to. So thank you very much. Have a great day. We've got another great episode ready for you on episode 21. Have a wonderful day.